Good morning, everybody. There's not, as you probably noticed on the NOFA we had when it came out last week, there's not a whole lot of changes. We just kind of refined a lot of it. And we'll kind of go through some of the rules that we have. But for the most part, it's pretty similar to the last two NOFAs what we've had. There may be some changes on the next NOFA. Just an FYI, we are probably ending our tenure with RTIP. NDOT is working on putting together a similar ETIP, and they would make that available for everybody. So it would flow with SPMS and everything like that. So everybody would go back to doing quarterly reports in SPMS, or ITAP, I should say. And then there's a call for projects tab in there where it's similar to the county one that the county puts in, or the rural one that NDOT. So it's similar to that. It has a lot more information, particular to MPO areas. But it would be the same for the consultants. It would be the same throughout the state. So whether you did one for Indianapolis MPO or NACON or Mercy or Evansville, it would all be the same.
So they'll no longer have individual scoring stuff?
Well, it would be run like the LPA, or it'd be run like Kathy runs hers. So
But again,
it's still in development. So it's still in development. And we would have, and they would then go, after that they would go to the technical committees. But it's still in development. And if we wanted to use this, we could use this form.
Because on the state program, there is really much to do. For the local bridge projects, it's just. So how would that work?
I'll let you know.
That sounds like one of NDOT's better ideas that might not be.
Actually, it's going to work out. It's going to work out because we have RTIP, and a lot of people don't like RTIP. Good morning. Yes. Have a seat. You can sit at the table. Anyway, I haven't really. I've been working with them on developing the new ETIP, but I haven't really. And there's a call for projects in there. We haven't figured out how we're going to. We're still working on it, I should say. You can sit at the table. Did anybody have any immediate questions on the application? Yes.
When we had our winter meetings, we talked about there was an error. It's here.
I think that's within Excel. Yeah. I tried to just get rid of them so you had to enter you would have to enter the information twice, or carry it over on your own, put it back on the operator, so to speak. Some of the ones like these calculations I did, and I'm not worried about that because you can score it and then it'll show at the bottom of the other tab.
One thing I scored was like you did the 7% thing for PE right away. Remember we had the long discussion about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not fix that. So it's probably still there. But a lot of that, I mean, we can work out afterwards. as you saw on the schedule, Friday, November 11th, the applications are due. Now until November 11th, we are doing application meetings with one-on-ones. If anybody wants to come in and talk to us, let me know. I'll be happy to set up an appointment to go over potential projects that you want. That's probably the best way to do it, because we at NERC want to see the best projects go forward. So we'll help you write a narrative to sell your project. I'll give you pointers on what would be a good project, or how you could best describe your project, so that you can, I don't want someone coming in and just putting down, we want to put a trail from point A to point B. You could do that, but I'd like to know how is it going to benefit, especially the EJ community, how it's going to help safety, how it's going to help congestion, so on and so forth. How it's going to connect different parts of the town or whatever. Mike?
Actually says 18th.
Yes, they're doing the 18th, but the meetings are until the 11th. Did I say that wrong? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and the reason I say that the 11th is if you're calling me the last week to schedule a one-on-one, then you're kind of late. That horse is kind of late leaving the gate, so probably don't have enough time to gather all the necessary letters of support and so on and so forth. So, Denny?
Are you saying that the sponsors should elaborate a little bit more through an additional document or something?
Well, on the supporting documents, please tell your story. People have in the past told pretty good stories. So, but if there's two projects and they're both scored, let's say both scoring a 70, we need to decide on how we're going to fund them, and so it's going to come down to where they are and what kind of projects there are. But if there's something that can help you justify HSIP, other than this intersection is going to improve safety because less cars will crash or something like that, then you need to provide, like I said, you need to tell that story, and part of that story is going to be providing crash history and how something is going to. So that's why I'm saying that. Yes.
Have we had anything formal yet from NDOT about using HSIP for sidewalks and or perhaps trails as pedestrian accommodations?
NDOT has told me in an email, so I do have written that they are considering that I can go ahead and program HSIP funds, systemic HSIP fund. This would be a systemic project for sidewalks on busy streets. So I take that to mean a major collector and above. Because really, what's the definition of a busy street? So there's nothing on trails unless maybe it's a trail along the street. If you have a trail that's going along an arterial or something like that.
That's what I mean. If you would have, say, you do a street diet, and you put either a cycle track or you put a trail, and it's separated by the 4 or 5 foot buffer from the street, would that be considered a pedestrian accommodation in a similar way that a sidewalk would be?
that's something I would probably have to call Indianapolis and talk to them about.
Can you check with maybe Mark Colorado or something?
Yeah, that's who I would
Let us
talk with.
know quickly, because that may impact some of the projects, because the HSIP funding is 90-10, is that right?
Right. And I think they are still figuring it out. Because last January when I talked to them, they told me that that they were considering it, and I followed up in August, and they said yes, sidewalks on busy streets, we could consider that systemic. Now, they haven't changed their systemic form. So, if we have like number of pedestrians on the road, I would consider that. You know, that's something else that maybe, if you have an idea how many pedestrians are walking on the road, you know, walking in the street because there's no sidewalks. Yes, look at that. I don't know how you would get that count other than having someone sit out there. So I don't know.
Well, I guess until they require it, they don't require it.
Right, right.
I'm getting some comments from some clients, they can't hear the presentation, and one says he hasn't, not been able to see the video yet.
I have it running, so I can see it on my computer. The sound I can turn up, but at the same time, if I turn it up too much, then it just becomes very muffled, if that makes sense, because you're in a big room and this is the only thing. But I don't know what the
Video's on now.
I mean, the video's been up since it started, so I don't know their issue there.
Could be a local issue.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
There's two new funding categories in the funding overview.
Yes.
CRP and Protect.
Yes.
So it looks like those are covering deficits from 22 or 24 and 25 right now, but then starting in 26, those funds, some of those funds are available. What are the rules?
CRP is Carbon Reduction Program. And basically they took funds from CMAQ and made them CRP. They're the same thing, only CMAQ, you have to do the calculations and figure out all the, noxious metals and all those airborne. CRP only is concerned about carbon reduction. Now if you reduce the carbon, then you reduce those other items too. But some things are considered eligible under CRP would be street lighting. If you go to LED from the halogen or the sodium, thank you. So that is something in there. It's all about reducing the carbon footprint. Now, the interesting thing about CRP is in any of the other programs, we don't have to program, we can move 50% of those funds in that pot somewhere else. So if I don't use all my HIP funds, I can put it in STBG. If I don't use all my CMAQ funds, I can put it in HIP, or somewhere else. CRP, we can't. CRP, we have to use all those funds for carbon reduction.
That includes like conversions from fossil fuel
Yeah.
to natural gas.
Right. So there's also some planning activities in there also. There's a lot of different things, but that CRP fund, they have to be used on carbon reduction.
If we do the calculations for CMAQ, will we be covered for CRP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, if you're meeting the CMAQ, then that covers, I call it CMAQ light, because you don't have to show the calculations, you just need to show, it just has to be one. I I think some of those are like a no-brainer. It seems like if this type of a project, like if you do modernizing your streetlights, I'm going to use that example because I mentioned it. How do you calculate the energy savings other than this is what we paid for light before and this is what we pay now? Calculating the energy savings would be a lot more difficult, so that's why you can just say this is a project to modernize our streetlights. Yes?
So this would be like a regular federal aid project to do this?
Yeah. Protect has a, what's that?
Back to Denny's question. Sometimes using those sounds good at front, but you still gotta go through all the NEPA and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
How stringent is all the NEPA and all that? I mean, sometimes it's not worth it after you go through all this other hoops.
The programmatic CE that was initially identified by NDOT years ago was a simple 3-page document. I've had programmatics that I've had to turn in over 60 pages.
And that's not going to change. That's not going to change.
All I'm saying is this may be a category that on the surface, oh, I can get 80-20 money to do this. But by the time you spend the money for the engineering and you wait 4 years to get your construction funds, that the payoff is there immediately. So.
Right, and that's the same with any project. I mean, we've mentioned it before that if you have a project that's under $300,000, roughly, do it on your own. Do it on your own. Don't take the federal money. I'll tell everybody any day of the week. Do it on your own. It'll be done quicker, faster, cheaper. A $300,000 project that you're proposing, to do it on federal funds is what, 700, 800,000? Yeah. So you're spending another, you'll get 80%, but that's where you have to weigh in the cost of, and if you do it on your own, you can do it a lot quicker. You could do it next year if you wanted to, if you have money for it. If you do it through our process, you're looking at 4 years from now. First off, because we don't have the money, and second off, the minimum to do a project with federal funds is 3 years. That's just the way the schedule works out. You might be able to squeeze it in what, 2.5? But there's a lot of risk there. So I would just say it's just something to keep in mind. But if you're looking at a project, a little more money than that, it might be worth your time and money to go after the federal dollars. So,
Charles, that brings forth the question, how many sidewalk projects are going to be over $300,000?
what's that?
Right now, all of them.
So,
Well,
now I mentioned PROTECT. PROTECT stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation. So, I believe someone in Washington, some intern in Washington got a gold star for coming up with that name. At least it makes sense, SDBG. And this one is really, it's all about climate resilience. Now, there's not a whole lot of money. There's only like, I think less than $500,000 in the PROTECT. But we would just be applying that toward another project. If you had, I guess probably the projects that we're probably looking for are projects that if you have a flooding issue, if you need to, and I know we're talking the $300,000 mark, but if you had a culvert or that needed to be enlarged or something like that, I know it doesn't cost $300,000 to throw in a culvert or to replace a culvert, but if you had an issue that the water was topping, or someone mentioned removing dead trees and replanting with, or removing, like, say, ash trees because of the emerald ash borer, and replacing them with other native species of trees, something like that. I think someone had mentioned to me about a possible project, so. Or even doing if you want to do a study on something like that. So. And we may just throw that towards a bridge or something, and then just beef up the bridge or raise it a couple inches or something like that. I know Lake County's got a bridge on Kennedy Avenue that, or is that's not yours, is it? It would be yours, but that they need to raise it, but it's not a whole lot of money that's in Protect. There's not a whole lot of money there. Like I said, I think it's less than $500,000. So, are there any questions up until now? So there's several different tabs on here. Pay attention to the programming rules, especially if you're wondering about a project. Most of them are the same. We did tighten up some rules from last time. If you have a project that is on NDOT's maintenance or NDOT's controlled roadway, will only cover, as we have discussed in the past at T-Rock and maybe at TPC, but T-Rock, about only covering half of the cost. So NERC itself would only cover half of the cost, and then the other half of the cost would have to be borne by either NDOT or the local. Now, of that half of the cost, NERC would only be paying 80% of it, so 40%. Unless it's an HSIP project, then you would be able to get 45%. So, yeah, if it's on an NDOT state road, NDOT controlled intersection, yeah, we're only going to be chipping in 40% of the cost of the project. And something that was brought up yesterday in a meeting I had, would be the embellishments, not embellishments, that's not a good term. The local park. In other words, a gateway sign to come into town or something like that if you're doing a roundabout. Some of those Z items that, and on an NDOT project, a Z item on an NDOT project, NDOT's not going to pay for that. So that would have to be, so I guess it could come out to a little more than 80%, because we would cover that, but NDOT's not going to cover that. So those Z items would have to be, we would cover that at 80%. What's that? So if you had if NDOT had a project going through Valparaiso, and you wanted to put up some decorative lighting, okay, those would be Z items, right? And you'd be paying for those at 100%, right? Well, NERC pays for those. So you'd have to back those out, and then we would pay 80% of those.
That's if you get an arrangement within that you're a partner with.
Right. Right.
What about,
They got got their money, and then you're talking about we get our money, federal,
Right.
how do you do that?
Well, then you're gonna have to do some coordination with NDOT to get it on their, to get the project on their books also.
Would NERC cover water mains and sanitary? No, there's the items on NDOT.
Those are the items on all federal aid projects unless they're relocation.
Yeah.
And even then, it depends on the scenario.
So there's your answer. Yes, Beth?
Noting some conflicts on what's high priority and what's medium priority on the trail corridors. The map is included, like the PDF version that's in the application versus the ARC GIS online map.
Mm-hmm.
Do we assume that the static
So
shot is the accurate one?
Peter Kimball is no longer working for NERC. He's our GIS.
Uh-huh.
He was our GIS person. So we're creating our maps on our own.
Okay.
I mean, he left like a month ago.
Yeah.
And he had done all the maps for this. So there have been a couple changes. There are 2 new maps, I think. And I'm trying to figure out how to get those incorporated into those websites. So yeah. So the priority maps that are on the, is that on the trails? I think I just put a tab in there.
I'm looking at the trails right now. So there's
You're looking at the trails application?
yeah, so the priority trails tab that has dated October 22, and I get, because that's later, I assume that is more reliable, so we should use the alignment. You can get, you can zoom in more on the web map to the area that you're choosing, but it's going to show up as a different priority than what's in this map.
This one?
Yeah, so that's what we should use, even if
Yes.
the ARC map is different.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so that's, I threw that map in there instead of putting it in with the link to all the maps.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, if you have any questions, specific questions, get a hold of me and I'll either answer them or we can sit down and go over all your projects. Trying to think of any other programming rules that we have changed. Point values, as stated in the questions, are the only points allowed. So last time there were some partial. Some of the committees allowed partial points. So if it's 5, 3, and 1 point, there you won't be able to get 4 points or 2 points.
Yeah, that was pretty subjective last time.
Yeah. We did talk about some descriptions. A legacy project is a project that has received partial funding for CN. A project that has received PE, or that should be PE, or right-of-way funding, but did not receive any CN funding. And in order to receive any PE or right-of-way funds, the project must score competitively. So we're not, if we have $300,000 left over, we're not going to just throw it on a project down the line. But that project has to score competitively. And a transformational project. So a definition of a transformational project. The project must be listed in NERC's long-range transportation plan. Right now, we have two projects that are transformational, and that is Willow Creek and Kennedy Avenue. Transformational projects will be looked at and scored separately from other projects. So they're going to be at the same time in the same meetings. Those two projects for those two corridors, Kennedy Avenue and Willow Creek, are going to be taken together, are going to be scored against each other and not against other roadway modifications or anything like that. They may be part of a suite of projects in a corridor, which most of them are because they tend to be multiple phases. And they shall not encumber more than $10,000 of federal funds in any 2-year NOFA. So we don't want these transformational projects sucking all the air out of all of our other projects. May not be offered in consecutive years. So only once in the 2 years will we offer a transformational project. So it'll probably go back and forth. Projects must let in July at the agreed upon fiscal year because of the inherent risk of it and the type and the size of the project. And actually, I would love if everybody put their projects in July. We're seeing right now that projects are sliding because of one reason or another. And it's not something that we can control. Porter County has a project that slid because it's in bankruptcy court. And it's slid. And so it's moved out. It's not in ours. It's not in NERC's. It's NERC's. It's not our NERC managed funds, but it moved from, and Lowell has a project too, that it moved from 24 to 26, 28, because that's the next time they have the money for it. Because of one or two projects, in one case, one or two parcels went to condemnation. Okay.
We're seeing project estimates exploding. And my guess is that probably will go for another calendar year. That's just a guess. Has there been any thoughts here about changing some of the selected projects, kind of moving things from out a year to make available money in a current year to fund some of these increased project costs?
Right now, if your project has an increase, then what I've told everybody before is that to tell your mayor, tell your city council, tell the county commissioners that you may not get 80% or 90% of your cost of your project in NERC.
So wouldn't it be an alternative way of keeping the funding at?
So then if we moved your project, if we moved, say, Dwayne's project out a year to fund yours, then I'd have to move someone else's project out a year.
I understand.
There's a big domino effect.
But almost everybody's project is going to be facing this. This is not just one project sponsor's problem. This is a universal problem. We're seeing estimates on projects 70% over budget numbers. And this is not one project. It's a multitude of them. So while Dwayne's project would have to move to make room for Denny's project, Dwayne's project may also need money.
Right.
Because this isn't going to go backwards. The numbers that we're seeing increase are going to stay at that level. They're not going to drop back. Because there's many facets as to what's causing this. I'm just throwing out the idea that this could be an alternate consideration. The Group 3, Group 4 money, according to Fort Wayne District, they're telling us that money for the current fiscal year, in July, was $20 million in the hole. And this is after they got a 28% increase. And their plan for that is that the LPAs will pay it. And that's a big number. So when this other alternative could be utilized at the NDOT level as well, to, instead of going out for new projects to put into the pipelines, 2 years worth of money, when we don't have enough money to fund the stuff that's in the pipeline, I just wonder about the wisdom of that. And you know, it's going to force more LPAs to take a harder look at, after they've already spent money, of whether or not they can continue on with the project.
That's an option. I mean, we can talk about that.
That would be a T-Rock discussion.
Yeah, we could bring that up at T-Rock next week. Right now, actually, for T-Rock, I don't have anything on the agenda. So if we did discuss it, we could discuss it at T-Rock. And that would be the only thing we'd be discussing, because we have nothing to vote on. So, I mean, I'm open to that idea.
Charles,
Yes.
is there kind of a ideal range for project size? I know that we're kind of, we knew what that was before, and now costs are so much greater. I'm just thinking if I'm tackling a project at $2 million, for instance, I just get a very tiny little bit of the project done. What are you expecting?
Actually, any project that exceeds $6 million and cannot be broken down into smaller phases will be deemed a transformational project. So that cap, I guess, is $6 million. In Lake and Porter County. In the Porter County, they only get $2 million, maybe 2.5. So they obviously, that is, we discussed that internally with them, or I should say at T-Rock. I guess it depends on what you think. I mean, you know, if you ask for $6 million, just keep in mind that there's another 2 or 3 projects that won't get done elsewhere in Northwest Indiana. Now, that's up to you if you want to go for it. So I do ask, like I did last time, give me your preference on projects that you really want. So I do factor that in there. If your mayor wants, or your city council wants something done on this street, and this is your proposal, and you've got 3 or 4 different projects, and you're catching a lot of pressure to do that project, and you can score that. You can say, I want that one's more important, like we did last time. Yes, Danny.
Number 2,
The application?
the rules.
Okay.
The sponsor must have a current ADA and Title VI plan. If you just have a plan, is that what you're after?
That's required by federal regulations.
How does that get implemented? Okay. There's been some discussion about, you update your plan every year or 2 from the standpoint of what you got done and what projects you've done. Title VI, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think there is any annual update on that. And so you throw this out here, and what is being required by NERC of the LPA.
We are not requiring this. We're only requiring this because federal guidelines say you have to have it.
Well, it says here, must have it on file with NERC.
So
We have a ADA plan for every single LPA. Granted,
Yeah, you already
sometimes
have that.
sometimes they're from 2018, but we have one from everybody.
So
It's
everybody beats that.
I don't know how it works with NOFA. I'm just saying that NERC has one for every single LPA at this point.
So we required it because the feds require you to have one on file. So all we did was just make
So
sure.
whatever's on file now satisfies number 2.
Right.
It's been a few years though since we filed those.
We asked for them. It would have been in 20. It would have been some point last year. We got a few of them, but I mean, most of them haven't been updated since 2018. Is from what I have on file.
Thanks, Kevin. Are there any other changes in these rules that we?
It's not a rule in that, but we talked about the counties and bridges, how we going to deal with that.
So bridges are part of the roadway modification, and they're an important part, and they cost a lot of money. So what we have done and gone back to what we've done in the past, which before my time was that we would fund a project every year, a bridge project every year in Lake and Porter County. So Dwayne, if you want to get with Bob, figure out how you want to do your bridges, that's fine. But we do need to do bridges. And Kathy's group does work. Kathy's group will work with us. But conversely, we need to work with them. So if the project, I mean, she's called me and I talked to her about some of these bridges that are in the MPA. And so therefore she would rather not fund them if she doesn't have the money. So she will fund them if we can't fund it. And she has funded projects in Munster, but then recently I think there was a project in Holbrook that she didn't fund, correct?
The last call on the local bridge project, they did, it was in Maryville.
Yeah, Maryville, okay. Yeah. And the same was up in LaPorte. There was a project, there was a bridge in LaPorte. So they'll probably be asking for that. But they have 2 bridges over there, and one's an expensive bridge, so I don't know. Anyway, that's something we'll talk with them in their NOFA, or in their T-ROC meeting. Okay. I'm not sure. I think we did put it in one there about bridges, but I don't know where it's at. There was a question earlier this year about the Living Streets policy. Question or rule number 3. NERC's Living Streets policy and guidelines shall be followed. If the cost for that item is 15% of the total, 15% is more than 15%, 50% or more, then you can not include it. But if you can include something, even if it's undersized, that's better than nothing. But if right-of-way costs are astronomical, I'm thinking kind of along the US 30 corridor or something like that. If you have to buy right-of-way for a rain garden or something, that might be cost prohibitive. But please do look at other options. Any questions on the funding tab? Or the programs and project types? Yes.
Just a clarification, item 9, let's say you have I guess this applies, we all got projects that maybe are there, they're unfunded. And this kind of would apply if you change scope and all that.
So you shouldn't be changing the scope to make it an entirely different project. The idea is if you have a project on, say, US 30, let's say you're going to do an intersection modification on US 30, and you put it in there, and then you come back afterwards and say, you know what, we really don't want to do it on 30, we want to do it on Central Avenue, on Elm Street. We're going to do this same project on Elm Street, which is a mile away. So that's the whole idea of it, is that we're not swapping projects. And T-Rock does, I get it, and we have gone through this before. So T-Rock has guidelines, or NERC has guidelines, if you want to go through that. And that's basically, you take the project and score it, the new project, and score it, and then you have to bring it before T-Rock and TPC and have them debate over it. So the idea is we don't want, if you're putting a project in the NOFA, if you don't want to do the project, that's fine, just let me know. We can put the money towards something else, or we'll save it and maybe we'll give it to another project that was next in line, or a project that had gotten PE because they didn't get all of their money. Like I said, we just don't want projects that were put in there and then swapped out. They click and the bait and switch it, excuse me.
What does it mean, downsizing the scope for phasing project provided your work does not increase? I can see some scenarios that you talk about cost, right? So you need projects, you got to change something. Or you got an intersection where you can do a conventional intersection, because you did your studies, it was going to become a roundabout instead. All those, to me, are changes in scope.
They are changes in scope. If you're changing downsizing the scope, I would say would be if you're working on a corridor and you changed it from doing like a boulevard type setting to just a 3-lane road.
I guess in response, if you did value engineering on a project, we found out, because of bidding climate and all, that would probably, that statement right there kind of prohibits you from doing it.
Right. And then we would discuss that at T-Rock.
That would go for length too, so if you
Yeah.
have a length and you need to shorten it, there's no way you can afford it.
Right. Or you want to break it into phases. And you do phase 1 now, and then at the next NOFA, you would submit in the second phase. Or some other variation, or you're going to do phase 2 on your own. Any question on any of the questions on the application? Anything else?
We're supposed to give everything in, fiscal $22 and you inflate
23.
23. Oh,
Yeah, fiscal 22 is gone.
okay.
Yeah, give it to me in today's dollars. And please include a 15% contingency. in the past, I've gotten anywhere from 10 to 25% contingency. So I know this is a scope. This is just a preliminary engineer's estimate. So you're going to throw some contingency in there. So just make it all 15%. Like I said, I've gotten anywhere from 10 to 25. So if we need to later on, we'll figure out the money later on. But for now, give it to me in $23. NDOT has a very good inflation calculator. I will use that and I will take it out to whatever appropriate year. The other thing is, if you give it to me, if you want to do your project in say 27, and we can't fund it till 28, well then you need more money. And conversely, if you were planning on wanting it in 28, well, we could fit it in 27, well, then you've got too much money. So that's why, so when I do, then I'll do a matrix and I'll do a spreadsheet and I'll put in how much it's going to cost in 26, 27, and 28. And whatever we choose, wherever it's, if we talk about 27, it's 3.2 million. If we're talking about 28, it's 3.3 million. And we can put in the right amount.
When we're calculating what our overmatch is, how do the caps on certain elements, like 7.5% on PE and the 15% for CE or 12, thank you. So if we know that we're going to spend 25% of the project cost on PE, that's calculated. We would consider everything that we pay for over the 7.5% as part of our overmatch.
We do not.
I think we discussed
And
that.
it's been 2 years since I've done an open, so bear with me.
Two.
I thought we discussed that over the winter, that you don't get credit for the soft costs.
I don't think you get, that's what I was thinking. You don't get credit for that. You only get credit if you overmatch on the CE, on the CN.
So then are you gonna limit PE to 7.5% programming?
If you ask for it, that's the most you can get.
I thought we discussed your judged on CE and CN only.
Yes.
Soft costs.
Yes.
For the school, for purposes.
So your
of scoring.
PE, if you say you need that 7.5% is of just the CN, not CN and CE. Okay.
With respect to the right of way, is that both services and acquisition then, or is that more?
Yes.
7.5% limited to services and PE.
PE or right-of-way services are part of PE, aren't they? No.
Not
Then
parts.
Can we know?
You
Yeah.
can do appraisals.
Right, you're
and highway
engineering.
engineering.
But the actual then acquisition, the buying and you
Later.
do appraisals without contact.
right.
So if you have, I mean, you can have appraisals in both contracts, but if that 7.5% is also limited to the actual acquisition of the land itself.
We haven't discussed that, so I will leave that up to your judgment. So, and technically you can either only get PE or right-of-way. So, or I guess it depends on how you want to proceed with that. But like I've told everybody in the past, go through the NDOT RFP process, and choose, and go through that process and follow that process, and choose your consultant accordingly. Because, gosh darn it, I always find change in the couch cushions in March. And if you have an approved designer on board, it's easy for me to just ask you for a FEMA's request.
Obligated funds.
Yep. But if you don't, if you didn't follow it, then, and that's fine, you can do it however you want. Help me help you.
And I'll tell you, I was a year behind on doing that with Tanner.
So. And if you have it approved this year, that's fine. Next year I have extra money, I can throw it to you next year. And I can give you, I might be able to only give you, say, $100,000. You need $300,000. I might only be able to give you $100,000. Well, that's nice. Next year I might be able to afford the other $200,000. We'll see.
Is it in that stance that in that scenario, only the services that haven't been performed can be paid for with that match? They won't reimburse you, in other words, for the work you've already done. Because you need them to give you a notice of authorization, notice to proceed, purchase order.
But if you have that purchase order, then we can reimburse you.
You won't get a purchase order if it doesn't have federal funds attached to it.
I know that, but I'm saying if you do have federal funds on it, we can always go back.
They can supplement the PO.
Right. So if you already had right-of-way, purchase order for right-of-way, and you only got your 7.5%, and that was in $22, I can always, and I have money in 23, and project's already been built. We can go back and give you the money to reimburse you. Granted, you gotta ask other people at T-Rock, but
that would work.
That is an option.
Yeah, and he's thinking, for engineering, if you've already started the engineering and you spent $75,000, say, and then you're able to find funding, you won't get reimbursed that
No.
$75,000.
That's true.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
It would
but
be moving
he's
forward
right.
that you would.
You have a PO
So-
already.
Yeah.
Because Gary did that pretty well back to the construction supervision. They had a PO.
Right.
It wasn't enough to cover, and they went retroactively when they had got more to the PO, then they were able to take care of the expenses and it's because there was a PO already established.
Yeah, so that would be in the case of the 7.5% cap. You already hired your engineer through the RFP process. You find more funding to bring you over the 7.5%. You can supplement.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Crown Point did that too with right-of-way.
Yeah.
So, and then one other, somewhere, if you have money that's been given to you or promised for a project by, let's say, let's say a warehouse comes in and they say, hey, yeah, if you do an intersection modification in front of our warehouse and put a light up, and they're going to pay for the light, tell me, because I'm going to program that in. I'm not going to program it in, I'm going to note it in there, because if they're going to pay for the light, then we want them to pay for the light. NERC shouldn't have to come back later on and pay for the light if this warehouse said they were going to pay for the light. Any other questions? Just so everybody's notified, quarterly meetings are starting next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, the 2nd, Wednesday the 9th, and Thursday the 10th are quarterly meetings. I haven't got the 9th and the 10th figured out because there are some, I don't think anybody in this room, there are some that are listening maybe that have not responded to give me their dates, their preferred dates. Valparaiso did give me their preferred dates, and Valpo is scheduled. So you can put your hand down. So I will be reaching out to those folks today to try to find out, and then I will, but I did, the second is already full. So I did reach out to, everybody who's received an email with the meeting times, no, not meeting times, I should say. I do need to get the meeting times out. That's what I should have done this morning. I did send out like I said, it is virtual. I didn't give everybody their meeting times. I do need to get that out. Those of you who are in here, let me just pull that up. Maryville is at 8:15. Lake County is at 8:30. Portage is at 8:50. Porter County is at 9:05. Cherville's at 9:30. Winfield is at 9:40. Crown Point is 9:50. Griffith is 10 o'clock. Hammond is at 10:15. Highland is at 10:35. And Lowell is at 10:45. And then what I have scheduled for that was on the 2nd. So on Wednesday the 9th, I have Cedar Lake, LaPorte County, Munster, LaPorte City, Valparaiso. And don't write down those times, Mike. On the date, you can write the date, but don't write the times. On November 10th, I have Michigan City, Gary, and Burns Harbor. Like I said, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 people that have not got back to me. So I do need to reach out to those folks and figure out what's best for them. And then I will send out the meeting invites. But I will send out another meeting invite for telling everybody what time it is next Tuesday. Next Wednesday. Next Tuesday's T-Rock. Okay? Any last questions on anything? Okay. Thank you.